Chapter 11. In the morning, the first thing she did was make sure the heron was in her pocket. Poked several times through the inseam. No wonder she'd gotten so many scratches but hadn't been able to find it. Even Dormant, the monkey king, was dangerous. Ma the cricket needed more food, so Tom tore up some lettuce scraps from their dwindling lunches to add to the carrot shavings. She wished she had a banana. Ma loved them. The others got ready also, but there was an unease in the air between them, a big giant question no one knew how to ask. Now what? Ka wouldn't meet her eyes, and Tom was secretly glad. She didn't know what to say to him. She had no idea how to make things better, and she wasn't even sure who had been right. She was grateful for Ka's help, but what if he still blamed her for everything? They had searched the mountain yesterday. With Ka flying, it had been easy to reach all the caves where the sage could possibly be hiding, and yet he had been nowhere. Either he didn't want to be found, or they had the wrong place. But North said he was here, Ka said, when Tom voiced her doubts out loud. They hiked down the trail together, Conchow back in her human disguise. Below them, the park once again filled with crowds of tourists. Maybe he was wrong, Tom said. Maybe the sage had already left. We would have heard, Ka said. It's the Dragon King's job to patrol the land and to make sure that everything is peaceful. They would know if the sage had left to go somewhere else. I don't know, Ka. I think maybe. But Tom had no idea how to finish that thought. She had no idea where else to look. If the Dragon Kings had been wrong, how would they be able to find the sage? Who else would know where he was? How else were they going to get up to the heavens? He was their only remaining path, unless they somehow found Princess Liei Han, but that was impossible. She hadn't been seen for over 20 years. They spent the day roaming the park for lack of a better plan, but even if the sage was hiding among the mortals, there was no way he would appear in front of so many tourists. As the sun started to set, Tom knew they couldn't spend another night in the cave. Her body was sore from sleeping on the ground. The little sleep she had gotten still left her exhausted, and even though no one wanted to say it, they were all starting to stink a little. She and Ka hadn't packed any extra clothes. Plus, they were running low on the food the Dragon Kings had packed for them. She didn't have much cash on her. She hadn't thought they would be traveling the world. When she'd first embarked to follow the Monkey King, she had naively thought that she would take him down easily and quickly. They're going to kick us out soon, Tom said, as the park started to empty of the lucky people on vacation with comfortable hotel rooms to return to, people who had no idea the Monkey King really existed or what he was doing to their world. Maybe we can search again tonight, Ka said. All three of them looked up at the mountains. Tom thought about their fruitless search last night, the empty caves, and the dark, scary tunnels that looked like no one had been there for centuries. No, Conchow said, echoing what Tom was thinking. He's not up there. Ka looked down. What do we do then? No one had an answer. Are we just going to give up? He asked. He looked at Tom for the first time all day, yearning for a solution. She was too tired to think of one. She felt dizzy and sleepy and a bit feverish. Every time she tried to think too hard, her head hurt. We need a better place to sleep, she said, and then we can come back. He's here, Ka said as the three of them walked toward the exit. I know he is. The Dragon King said he would be here, and they know. They travel the world. They keep the order. They would have told us if the sage left. Desperate to convince him, he let his voice get a bit too high. Tom turned around to tell him that she believed him. Of course the Dragon Kings were trying to help, but maybe they were wrong. Something caught her eye. They had passed the exit and stood on the other side of the gateway. The statue that had guarded the top of the arch was still there, but something looked off, different. She could have sworn that when they'd arrived yesterday, the figure had been holding a cane and wearing a conical straw hat on its head. But now he was holding the hat in his hand, a few inches above his head, almost as if he was greeting them or saying goodbye. Ka was still talking. They might have given us the wrong address, maybe the wrong place. What if we're supposed to go to Da Nang instead of Na Dang? There are similar mountains there, and Tom waved a hand for his attention. What is it? He asked, then followed her gaze to the statue. He looks different, Tom said. Who? The statue. How? You don't see it? She waved at her hand. The hat. Ka squinted. No. Tom looked at Conchow. Am I crazy? The fox demon shrugged. I wasn't paying attention. I swear it moved, Tom said. So? Ka said. So? I think it's important. How? I don't know. Okay. Ka shifted his weight. So now what? Can we get up there somehow? What? To the statue? What, to the statue? Tom resisted the urge to roll her eyes, only because Ka was finally looking at her directly again. Well, yeah. And do what? I don't know. Why were they both being so weird about this? I'll see when I get up there. Ka crossed his arms, his expression impatient and frustrated, and while a part of Tom understood why, another part couldn't help thinking that if the Monkey King were here, he wouldn't hesitate to fly up to the statue, if only because he thought it would be fun. I just want to see it up close, Tom added. Maybe once it gets dark again, we can fly up there. Ka exchanged a weird, knowing glance with Kinchao. It reminded her of Bethany Anderson and Sarah Mazel, the two bullies on her soccer team, the way they would make fun of her. But this was worse. Ka and Kinchao were supposed to be her friends, or at least on her side, and the look they now shared sent shooting pains straight to her belly. They had been talking about her behind her back. Maybe last night, after Tom and Ka's argument, or maybe all along. Maybe they had doubted her this whole time, only now they were expressing their questions out in the open, right in front of her. They were right, if that was the case. She had no idea what she was doing. She was trying to find the answer as she went along. And right now, she knew she had to get to that statue. She couldn't ignore the feeling that it was very important. Come on, what else are we going to do? She pointed out. We could fly back to North's palace, Ka said. Maybe he'll have a better idea. Okay, she thought about it. But how about we check out that statue first while we're here, and if nothing happens, then we'll go back. Khan and Kanchao looked at each other again, in a way that made Tom feel incredibly alone, which was an odd feeling since lots of people were moving all around them, practically shoving them aside in their hurry to leave the park. Okay, fine, Ka said eventually. We'll wait until dark, but then we'll go back to my uncle's and figure out a different plan. Tom nodded, relieved that Ka was still on her side. Even after their fight, he was willing to listen to her and help her. She thought guiltily again of the Monkey King's hair in her pocket. She needed to tell Ka and Kanchao about it. Then she remembered how they'd looked at each other, the silent conversation they'd had about her that echoed the many ones they probably had out loud, and she turned away. She wasn't the only one keeping secrets. To hide the hurt that wrenched through her, she pulled out the map of the park they'd gotten on the tour guide yesterday, even though she wasn't interested in any of its features. Ka walked away to sit down on a nearby tree stump, looking exhausted, his cheeks pink, his hair shiny with sweat, his clothes more rumpled than she had ever seen them. Kinchao followed him at first, but then moved upward into the copse of trees behind them, slipping easily out of view. Tom didn't know what to do while they waited. Should she sit with Ka? He probably wanted to be left alone. He had folded his map into a fan and looked like he might hyperventilate. Hey, there's a cafe near here, she said. I'm going to go get us something to drink. She paused. When he didn't say anything, she added, You can wait here if you want. Ka nodded and leaned back, trying to fit his body under the shade of trees. Tom breathed a sigh of relief and walked away, thankful to be alone for the first time all day. The cafe was a bit farther away than it seemed on the map, but the sun was starting to set, so the shadows of the trees were larger and cooler, and it wasn't an unpleasant walk. As she neared the small coffee cart, she got that tingling sensation in the back of her neck that told her she wasn't alone. Where are we going? The Monkey King asked, and even though guilt made her want to push him away, she was grateful for his presence. She could already feel the weight lifting from her shoulders. He had that effect sometimes, a reminder that nothing was as bad as it seemed, and that, even if it was, he could always fix any problem he came up against. To get some boba, hopefully, she said, holding out the map where a small menu had been printed next to the coffee shop. The Monkey King was invisible now, so she had no idea if he was even looking. Her mouth watered as she read the list of food options: marinated beef skewers, dried squid, fried shrimp, Cajun french fries. The Monkey King's face appeared briefly in front of her, licking his lips. Yum! Do you even eat? She asked. She had never seen him do it. Of course I do. I'm not dead. I just don't need to, so I don't waste my time, unless it's something utterly delicious, of course, like demon spirit. Tom almost stopped walking. What? He giggled. Kidding! Kidding! I haven't had demon spirit for centuries. Why would you eat demon spirit? She asked, horrified. Like I said, it's delicious. And because some spirits give you more power and longer life. Before I ate the peaches of immortality and drank the heavenly wine and took the pills of immortality, I sometimes revived myself on demon spirit. I made a lot of enemies that way, though. I wouldn't recommend it. He gave a long, suffering sigh. The things I resorted to before I became truly immortal. Tom wasn't sure if he was being serious or not, but she was saved from having to reply because they'd reached the cafe. It was a simple window set inside a brick building and a large patio with half its chairs already put away. Still, The barista let her order 4 iced boba drinks, barbecue skewers, Cajun-style potato discs on a stick before closing the window to any other customers. Tom paid for everything with the last bit of cash she'd thought to bring with her. Your friends don't deserve all this food, do they? The Monkey King asked, appearing briefly in front of her, walking backward with his hands behind his head. No one else seemed to see him. Tourists walked by and ignored Tom completely. She thought she might have looked pretty conspicuous with a sword sticking out of her backpack, but no one cared. The park workers were too busy cleaning up trash or putting away chairs or hanging up clothes sides to be worried about a girl walking by herself. We're all hungry, Tom said, clutching the paper bags of food, grease already soaking through the thin lining. She held out the container of 4 drinks. One's for you. Oh. He looked surprised, but he took one of the cups and held it up to blink at the black blobs in the bottom. What is it? He looked at the straw experimentally, then chewed on it and made a face. I don't think this stuff is good for you. You're not supposed to eat the straw, she said, laughing. That's just like a utensil. She took a sip of her own drink to show him how it was done. The Monkey King tried it and almost choked on a boba. He coughed it up and spat it into his hand. Is this a magical pearl that gives you incredible strength? No, weirdo. It's boba. It's food. You eat this? He asked, holding the black jelly-like ball up to his eye. Are you sure you've never had demon spirit? It looks almost exactly like it, except demon spirit smokes a little. No, of course not. I mean, I don't think so. I've never had demon spirit, she grinned. He looked back at her. He smiled. Then he popped the boba in his mouth, chewed, stuck out his tongue, flipped backward, and disappeared. Tom was sad to see him go, but she had almost reached Ka by then, so she knew the Monkey King couldn't stick beside her. Anyway, she scolded herself. She shouldn't be talking to him in the first place. They didn't trust each other. They weren't friends, no matter how often he said so. But still, she couldn't help feeling very lonely now that he was gone again. She clutched the bag of food and tried not to spill the drinks. Kinchao was sitting with Ka when she got back, her fox face covered by her scarf so she looked like a very regal grandmother, resting with her grandson. Oh my God, Ka said, for the first time all day, looking excited to see Tom, his eyes practically popping out of his head as he reached for the food. What is it? Where'd you get it? The cafe was about to close, she said. I got there just in time. Tom held out the skewers and drinks, and no one talked as they spent the next few minutes burning their tongues on the meat and cooling them down with the iced boba. Why'd you get 4? Ka asked, looking at the straw in the 4th cup the Monkey King had chewed on. Oh, I'm really thirsty, she said, snatching it away. I wanted 2 for myself. That's a lie, Kinchao said casually, as if commenting on how clear the sky was and not making an accusation. It was Wukong, wasn't it? Ka looked at the fox demon, then at Tom. What? There was a bubble of laughter in his voice, as if he wasn't sure if she was joking. She's been talking to the Monkey King, Kinchao said, finishing her food quickly. She still has a hair of his. Tom held up both cups in each hand, frozen. Lie, think of something. But her mouth opened and closed like a fish's, and she couldn't think of anything to say. Tom held up both cups in each hand, frozen. Oh my God, Kinchao's telling the truth, isn't she? Ka said. He looked down at the remaining skewer as if debating tossing it dramatically, but instead he tore off the last bite and then threw it in the trash. What are you thinking? It's not how... Tom tried to explain. Where's the hair? It's gone, Tom said, too fast. Check her pocket, Kinchao said. Ka moved toward her, the fox demon behind him, as if backing him up. Tom held up both boba drinks. Stop here. She placed the cups on the floor, then flipped the pockets of her hoodie inside out. If the Monkey King had snuck his hair back in there, he would have hidden it in the seam, but she really had no idea where he'd gone when he disappeared. Ka inspected the pockets, turning the fabric over several times, but didn't find anything, aside from Jay's ring. I'm not, working with him, Tom tried to explain. But you're not exactly beating him, are you? Kinchao pointed out. Her face was half hidden behind the scarf. What would that do? Tom said. He's just a clone. Tom, groaned Ka, we can't trust him. I don't. I know we can't. Then why didn't you tell us about him? Ka asked. Because She felt awkward and dorky standing there with her pockets sticking out, so she shoved them back in. Look, he saved me. I didn't know about him. I mean, I forgot about the hair. It's the one the Monkey King gave me to take into the heavens, and I just forgot, she shrugged. But then when I was drowning in the river, he saved me. I would have died. And okay, I should have told you both. I know. But then he left. I thought he was gone. There was no point after that. You still should have told us, Ka said. He's trying to get in your head again, Kanchao said. Tricking you. Tom nodded. I know. Don't listen to him, Ka said, his voice high, a sparkly sheen appearing on his face. Don't fall for it again. Tom crossed her arms. I know, she repeated. When neither of them said anything, she added, I'm sorry. They didn't respond. How did you know, anyway? Tom asked Kanchao. I heard the two of you talking last night. Tom closed her eyes briefly. You have really good hearing. Her scarf twitched where her ears were. Yes, she said, in a tone that suggested it wasn't something Tom should forget. What were you talking about? Ka asked. What does he want? Tom looked down. He says he's here to protect me. He's just tricking you again, Ka practically shouted. I know! The park was almost empty now, the daylight fading. Can you trust me? I didn't give in to him, and I didn't tell him anything. She's telling the truth, Conchow said, but still Ka made a funny face. Look, it's getting dark, Tom just said, gesturing at the sky. We should go. Ka glanced up as if realizing she was right. Fine, he said, but the conversation wasn't over, judging from his voice. Tom walked away and tossed the unfinished drinks into the trash.